Napoleon Bonaparte, the once mighty Emperor of France, tasted defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. This battle marked the end of his reign and the collapse of his grand ambitions. The battlefield, once a place of his numerous victories, now witnessed his ultimate downfall. His dreams of empire lay shattered. The vision of a unified Europe under French rule was no more. The grandeur of his empire, which had stretched across vast territories, was reduced to mere memories. His enemies, the nations of Europe, breathed a collective sigh of relief. The threat that had loomed over them for years was finally vanquished. The coalition of European powers who had long sought to curb his influence now celebrated their triumph. They sought to ensure that Napoleon would never again threaten the peace of the continent. They decided upon exile. The decision was unanimous. The once feared emperor had to be removed from the political landscape of Europe. Their chosen destination, the remote island of Saint Helena. Located in the South Atlantic Ocean, it was an isolated and desolate place, far from the intrigues of European politics. Napoleon's journey to St. Helena was long and arduous. The voyage was fraught with challenges as the emperor faced the harsh realities of his new life in exile. He boarded HMS Northumberland, a British warship, and began a voyage of over 6,000 miles. The ship, a symbol of his captivity, carried him away from the continent he once dominated. The defeated emperor traveled south through the Atlantic Ocean. The vast expanse of water symbolized the distance from his former life of power and influence. Gone were the luxuries and power he once commanded. The opulent palaces, the grand ceremonies, and the loyal subjects were all left behind. In their place were modest quarters and a life of solitude. He was a prisoner, his future uncertain. The man who once held the fate of nations in his hands now faced an unknown destiny, far removed from the glory days of his empire. But was Waterloo the end of Napoleon, or just the beginning of a new legend? St. Helena, a volcanic outcrop in the South Atlantic, was a place of stark beauty and profound isolation. Located over 1,200 miles from the nearest landmass, it presented a formidable barrier to escape or rescue. Its rugged coastline offered few landing spots. The island's interior, a mix of towering peaks and deep valleys, made movement difficult. For Napoleon, accustomed to the bustle of Paris and the grandeur of his imperial court, St. Helena was a shock. The island's isolation was both physical and psychological. It cut him off from the world he knew, from his family and supporters, and from the events shaping Europe's destiny. What torment does an emperor face when his kingdom is the sea and the sky? The impact of St. Helena on Napoleon's mental and physical well-being was profound. The confinement, the lack of purpose, and the constant surveillance took their toll. Napoleon, once a man of boundless energy and ambition, found himself increasingly withdrawn and introspective. His health, robust during his years of conquest, began to deteriorate. He suffered from stomach ailments, likely exacerbated by the stress of his situation. The tropical climate, while not unbearable, was a far cry from the European weather to which he was accustomed. The once dynamic emperor was visibly aging, his spirit slowly waning. With no battles left to fight, could his own mind become his greatest enemy? Napoleon's days on St. Helena settled into a monotonous routine. He rose late, often ate breakfast in his dressing gown, and spent much of the morning reading and writing. His personal library, a carefully selected collection of books, offered him solace and intellectual stimulation. Afternoons were often dedicated to exercise, usually long walks within the confines of his designated area. He dictated his memoirs, recounting his remarkable life and attempting to shape his legacy. Evenings were spent in the company of his small retinue, dining, playing cards, and reminiscing about the past. Stripped of power, stripped of glory, yet in ink he found his last weapon. Section 5. Jailers and their captive. Napoleon's relationship with his British captors was complex, marked by a mixture of respect, suspicion, and a degree of awkwardness. Governor Sir Hudson Lowe, tasked with ensuring Napoleon's secure confinement, often clashed with his famous prisoner. Napoleon, accustomed to deference and respect, chafed under Lowe's strict regulations and perceived pettiness. Their interactions, often strained and formal, became a source of frustration for both men. The British officers and soldiers stationed on the island, meanwhile, found themselves in the unusual position of guarding a fallen emperor, their attitudes ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. But who truly held the chains, Napoleon, or those who feared him still? Section 6. Crafting a legacy. Despite his isolation, Napoleon remained acutely aware of his place in history. He meticulously crafted his memoirs, dictating his recollections to his companions and shaping the narrative of his life and reign. He presented himself as a man of destiny, a visionary leader who had sought to modernize Europe and spread the ideals of the French Revolution. He downplayed his defeats and emphasized his achievements, portraying himself as a victim of circumstance and the combined might of his enemies. He sought to ensure that posterity would remember him not as a tyrant, but as a great man who had left an indelible mark on the world. Could history be rewritten by the hand of the fallen? Section 7. Whispers on the Wind. Despite St. Helena's remoteness, news from the outside world trickled in, carried by infrequent ships and whispered rumours among the island's inhabitants. Napoleon followed European politics with keen interest, analysing events and pondering what might have been had he remained in power. He received clandestine letters from loyal supporters smuggled onto the island, offering him glimpses of hope and fueling his belief that he could one day return to France. These whispers from beyond his island prison kept his spirit alive and fueled his dreams of regaining his lost power. Section 8. The Emperor's Reckoning. As the years on St. Helena wore on, Napoleon's thoughts turned increasingly inward. The once mighty emperor, who had commanded vast armies and reshaped the map of Europe, now found himself confined to a remote island far from the grandeur and power he once wielded. The isolation weighed heavily on him, and he spent countless hours reflecting on the past. He reflected on his life, his triumphs and failures, his ambitions and regrets. Each page of his journal became a canvas for his introspection, where he meticulously documented his thoughts and feelings. The victories that once brought him glory now seemed distant memories, overshadowed by the crushing weight of his defeats. He engaged in philosophical discussions with his companions, delving deep into the nature of human existence and the forces that shape history. These conversations were a source of solace for him, a way to connect with others and share his profound insights. Debating the nature of power, the vagaries of fate, and the legacy of his reign, Napoleon sought to understand the broader implications of his actions. He questioned whether his relentless pursuit of power had been justified, and whether the ends truly justified the means. He acknowledged his mistakes, admitting that his ambition had often outstripped his judgment. The relentless drive that had propelled him to the heights of power had also led to his downfall. He pondered the fine line between ambition and hubris, and how easily one could slip into the other. With a heavy heart, he admitted that his insatiable desire for conquest had brought suffering to many. Yet he remained convinced of the rightness of his cause, believing that his vision for France was one of progress and enlightenment. Arguing that he had acted in the best interests of France. He saw himself as a torchbearer of the revolution, striving to spread its ideals across Europe. Arguing that he had acted in the best interests of France and the principles of the revolution, he defended his actions with fervour. He believed that his efforts had been aimed at creating a unified and strong nation, capable of standing against the old monarchies of Europe and the principles of the revolution. He saw himself as a guardian of these principles, even if his methods were often ruthless. The tricolour cockade he held was a symbol of his unwavering commitment to the revolutionary ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. He expressed remorse for the lives lost in his wars, acknowledging the heavy toll his campaigns had taken on countless families. The battlefield aftermaths haunted him, a stark reminder of the human cost of his ambitions, but he justified his actions as necessary for the greater good. In his mind, the sacrifices were a part of a grander vision, one that sought to reshape the world for the better. As he pointed to the maps, he saw not just territories, but the future he had dreamed of, a future that, despite his exile, he still believed in. Section 9. Exile's Echo. Napoleon Bonaparte died on St. Helena on the 5th of May, 1821, at the age of 51. His final days were spent in a modest house on this remote island, far from the grandeur of his former palaces and the battlefields where he once commanded armies. His death, though expected, sent shockwaves through Europe. The news spread rapidly, carried by newspapers and word of mouth, reaching every corner of the continent. People from all walks of life, from the common folk to the aristocracy, were captivated by the end of an era. His exile had transformed him from a feared conqueror into a tragic hero, a symbol of ambition and the fleeting nature of power. The image of Napoleon, once a towering figure in European politics and warfare, now reduced to a solitary exile, evoked a sense of melancholy and reflection on the impermanence of human achievements. His exile had also allowed him time and space to shape his legacy. During his years on St. Helena, Napoleon meticulously crafted his memoirs, recounting his military campaigns, political maneuvers, and personal reflections. These writings were not just a recount of his life, but a deliberate effort to influence how history would remember him. His memoirs, widely read after his death, helped to cement his image as a brilliant military strategist, a charismatic leader, and a champion of the French people. Scholars and historians pored over these documents, analyzing his strategies and decisions and debating his impact on the world stage. Though he died a prisoner on a remote island, Napoleon's legacy lived on, his name forever etched in the pages of history. But did Napoleon ever truly die? Or did his name become immortal? Monuments and statues were erected in his honor, and his tomb became a site of pilgrimage for those who admired his audacity and vision. St. Helena, once a place of obscurity, became synonymous with his exile, a stark reminder of the fall from grace that can befall even the most powerful. The island, with its rugged landscapes and isolation, stood as a testament to the dramatic reversal of fortune that Napoleon experienced, from emperor to exile,